The sharp sound of a perfect shot resonated throughout the elite shooters club, followed by loud applause from affluent patrons clad in high-end shooting attire. Blake Radcliffe flowered his customized Remington rifle, a smug smile forming on his tanned face as the target displayed yet another bullseye. This was his domain, a place where wealth, influence, and skill formed an impenetrable wall between the elite and everyone else. If you've ever felt dismissed or overlooked, you might want to stay for what unfolded next at the moment that turned everything upside down at America's top shooting range. Emma Miller stood near the entrance, clutching her well-worn leather purse. Her modest blue cardigan and store-bought jeans made her stand out like a dandelion in a field of roses. At 35, she wasn't young enough to catch attention or successful enough to command respect in such a place. The receptionist, a young woman with flawless blonde hair and a practiced smile, glanced up, then quickly looked away, as if Emma were nothing more than a distraction. "Excuse me," Emma spoke softly. "I'd like to sign up for the open practice today." The receptionist looked up again, her gaze scanning Emma's plain shoes and simple ponytail. "Membership cards only," she replied, dismissing her. Emma took a deep breath and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "I have a day pass." It was a gift. Blake, from across the room, noticed the newcomer. At 42, he was at the peak of his career, a 5-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist, and the face of Remington's premium line. His family's oil fortune had afforded him the best training since childhood, and his innate talent had carried him further. Well, Blake drawled loudly, "looks like someone took a wrong turn on the way to Walmart." His companions laughed on cue, drawing more attention to Emma, who was making her way to the basic range, eyes fixed on the floor. Rebecca Johnson, the club manager and a former competitive shooter herself, scowled at Blake's comment but chose not to speak. Emma found a spot at the far end of the basic range. She carefully placed her purse on the small shelf and pulled out a cloth-wrapped package. With practiced precision, she unfurled the material to reveal a standard Glock 19A, serviceable, but nowhere near the customized firearms the club members flaunted. Blake and his friends moved closer, intrigued by the possibility of some entertainment. $10 says she can't hit the target, one joked. Blake scoffed. "Make it 10 grand. I bet she's never even held a gun." Blake sauntered over to Emma's station. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with exaggerated politeness, his voice dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a knitting circle." Emma looked up, her hazel eyes meeting Blake's blue ones, steady enough to momentarily throw him off balance. "I'm just here to practice," she said softly. Blake quickly regained his composure. "Practice, honey? This place is for serious shooters. $10,000 says you can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards. Emma's face remained expressionless, but something flickered in her eyes. "I don't have that kind of money," she replied. Blake's grin widened. "If by some miracle you manage to make the shot, I'll pay. If you miss, you leave and never come back. Deal?" Rebecca had approached during their exchange, concern evident in her expression. "Mr. Radcliffe, perhaps we should let our guest practice in peace." Blake waved her off without looking. "Stay out of this, Rebecca. We're just having a friendly wager." Emma's gaze dropped to her left hand, where a simple gold band encircled her ring finger. She twisted Ida so subtly that only the most observant would have noticed. "All right," she said quietly. Blake's eyebrows raised in surprise, but his face quickly settled into a confident smirk. "Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a show." No one noticed the shift in Emma's stance as she picked up her Glock. Her posture straightened, her shoulders relaxed, her feet shifted into a balanced position. Her grip was expert, her breathing controlled. No one realized the simple gold ring on her finger had once belonged to one of the most legendary snipers in SEAL Team 6 history. 3 years earlier, Emma had stood beneath a gray April sky. The crisp crack of the honor guards' rifles pierced the heavy silence at Arlington National Cemetery. The folded American flag pressed against her chest felt impossibly heavy as she watched her husband's casket descend into the earth. Master Chief Nathan Miller had served his country for 15 years, his unmatched skills as a sniper earning him medals and the respected nickname the Ghost among his peers. Official reports cited a helicopter crash during a classified mission, but Emma knew better. Some details of Nathan's death would remain classified forever. They had met in Burlington, Vermont, where Nathan was visiting a fellow SEAL recovering from injuries. Emma worked as an accountant, leading a life as predictable as the numbers she worked with. Their meeting at a downtown coffee shop stretched from apologies into hours of conversation. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony with a few friends and Nathan's fellow operators keeping a watchful eye. Life as a SEAL's wife had taught Emma to endure. Nathan's absence and the uncertainty of his work became a constant in Emma's life. He would disappear for weeks or even months at a time, returning with fresh scars he wouldn't explain and nightmares he couldn't share. "I wish I could tell you everything," he'd say, gently tracing her cheekbone with his rough thumb. "But I can tell you this, you're the reason I fight to come home." It was during one of those extended breaks stateside, following a brutal mission that had left Nathan with a torn ligament in his knee, that he first took Emma to a shooting range. "If I'm going to be away so much," he had explained, adjusting her stance with his gentle touch, "I want to know you can protect yourself." What started as a safety lesson gradually evolved into something more. It became a shared activity that allowed Emma a glimpse into her husband's world. Nathan turned out to be a patient teacher, and Emma proved to be an unexpectedly talented student. "You're a natural," he had whispered the first time she hit a bullseye. "You've got the 3 things that make a great shooter: steady hands, sharp vision, and the ability to stay calm under pressure." Over the next 3 years, whenever Nathan was home, they would practice together. He taught her everything: a proper stance, controlled breathing, sight alignment, trigger discipline. "Shooting isn't about aggression," he would explain. "It's about complete control over your body, your breath, and your fear." Emma absorbed every lesson, finding an unexpected sense of peace in their sessions. Those moments at the range became sacred, a time of connection that didn't require words. Sometimes, Nathan's SEAL teammates would join them. "Boss never shuts up about your progress," one of them, Michael Reeves, had confided. "He says you're a better natural shot than half the guys he's trained." The last time they went shooting together was just 2 days before Nathan left for his final mission. Nathan had been unusually quiet, more focused on watching Emma than working on his own shots. "Promise me something," he said, his voice rough against her ear. "Promise me you'll keep practicing even when I'm not here." Emma had nodded, not fully understanding the weight of his request. After the funeral, Emma couldn't bring herself to visit a range. Nathan's guns remained locked in their safe, untouched. She moved to Boston for a fresh start and took a job at a corporate accounting firm, where no one knew her as the widow of a fallen SEAL. Then, last week, a package arrived from Michael Reeves. Inside was a day pass to the Elite Shooters Club and a handwritten note. "Nathan would want you to keep your promise. 3 years is long enough to grieve alone. Come back to the living." Now, standing in the Elite Shooters Club with Blake Radcliffe's challenge hanging in the air, Emma felt something stir inside her, a spark of the person she had been before grief had hollowed her out. As she lifted the Glock, muscle memory took over. The world shrank to 3 points: herself, the gun, and the target. Emma took a deep breath, held it for a moment, then slowly exhaled halfway and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, crisp and clear in the silent range. Through the settling echo, the mechanical whirring of the target retrieval system seemed unnaturally loud. Blake kept his amused expression, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he noticed Emma's textbook stance. The target moved slowly toward them, building suspense with each mechanical click. When it finally arrived, a perfect hole marked the dead center of the bullseye. The silence that followed was profound, an emptiness where Blake and his entourage struggled to process what they were seeing. Emma calmly placed the Glock on the counter, her face unchanged. Blake snatched the target, studying it closely. "Beginner's luck," he finally declared, his voice sharp. "Anyone can get lucky once." Rebecca stepped forward, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine admiration. "That was an exceptional shot, Miss Miller." "Emma Miller," she supplied quietly. Rebecca nodded, offering a smile that was both apologetic and impressed. "Miss Miller, perhaps you'd like to try our advanced range facilities?" "Clearly, you're not a beginner." Before Emma could respond, Blake interrupted. "Hold it, now one lucky shot doesn't make her a pro. Let's see if she can do it again, this time with real stakes." An uncomfortable murmur spread through the crowd of spectators. $50,000, Blake announced, pulling his checkbook from his jacket pocket. If you can hit 3 bullseyes in a row at 75 yards. If you miss even one, you publicly admit you cheated and leave. Senator Williams placed a cautionary hand on Blake's shoulder. Blake, perhaps this isn't the time. Blake shrugged off the touch. What's the matter? Afraid your little trick won't work 3 times in a row? Emma considered simply walking away. She had come today only because of her promise to Nathan and not to engage in public spectacles. But something in Blake's dismissive arrogance sparked a fire inside her. It wasn't just about herself anymore, it was about everyone who had ever been underestimated or excluded. I'll take your challenge, Emma said softly, on one condition. If I win, the $50,000 goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. Blake hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Fine, not like you'll win anyway. As Emma moved to the 75-yard mark, Rebecca approached her. Miss Miller, you should know that Mr. Radcliffe holds the club record at this distance. No one has beaten his score in 5 years. Emma nodded, appreciating the warning. Thank you for your concern, Miss Johnson. But I'll be fine. Rebecca studied her, noticing the quiet confidence that seemed at odds with Emma's unassuming appearance. Blake was making a show of it now. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the sizable crowd, we are about to witness either the most impressive fluke in shooting history or the most embarrassing failure. 3 bullseyes at 75 yards with a standard handgun, impossible for an amateur. Emma methodically loaded fresh magazines as she prepared. Memories of Nathan's lessons flooded Emma's mind as she steadied herself. When the pressure's on, he had told her, fall back on your training. Let your body remember what your mind might forget under stress. The range fell into complete silence. All eyes on Emma as she prepared for the first shot. She took a little longer to aim, adjusting for the greater distance. The gun cracked, and the shot rang true, hitting the bullseye perfectly. Blake's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. The second shot followed soon after. Emma adjusted her stance slightly before firing again another bullseye. Before taking the third shot, Emma twisted her wedding ring once, feeling Nathan's presence beside her as if he were there in the flesh. The final shot split the air, landing dead center. Blake's face drained of color, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury. Rebecca returned with the 3 targets, displaying them for everyone to see. The hits were undeniably 3 perfect shots at a distance that would challenge even seasoned marksmen. Congratulations, Miss Miller, Rebecca said, admiration in her voice. That was remarkable. Blake snatched the targets, scrutinizing them with increasing desperation. This is impossible, he hissed. No one walks in off the street and shoots like this. She must have rigged something. Emma remained calm, but there was steel in her voice as she spoke. I believe we had an agreement, Mr. Radcliffe. Blake's voice grew louder. In agreement with a cheater? His tone was filled with venom. I'm not paying $50,000 based on some trick. Rebecca intervened, her voice firm. Mr. Radcliffe, Miss Miller's performance was witnessed by dozens of members, including Senator Williams. The shots were legitimate. Blake rounded on Rebecca, his finger pointing dangerously close to her face. Know your place, Rebecca. One word from me to the board, and you're done here. The threat hung in the air, silencing Rebecca. Though her expression remained resolute, Emma watched the exchange quietly, her gaze unwavering. If you're accusing me of cheating, Emma said evenly, perhaps we should move this discussion to a more private setting. Blake misinterpreted her words. Private? So you can avoid the consequences? No, let's settle this right here. He turned to the crowd, raising his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose a real challenge. 1 week from today, a formal competition. Me versus our mystery sharpshooter. 10 stations, varying distances, with club-provided equipment to ensure everything is fair. Emma realized, with a sinking feeling, that she had unintentionally stepped into something much bigger than just a challenge. Part of her wanted to walk away, slip back into her quiet life. But another part of her, one that had been dormant for far too long, knew she couldn't back down. I accept, she said quietly. Same terms. If I win, $50,000 goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Deal. And when I win, you'll publicly explain whatever trick you used today, As the crowd dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said quietly. "Blake doesn't lose gracefully, and he has considerable influence here." Emma nodded, feeling the adrenaline ebb away, leaving her tired but resolute. "I didn't come here looking for trouble, I just wanted to practice." Rebecca studied her with a thoughtful look. "Yet you shot like a professional." "Who are you really, Emma Miller?" Emma gathered her things, her voice barely a whisper. "Just someone keeping a promise." What neither Emma nor anyone else knew was that Blake was already on the phone, instructing his assistant to dig up everything on Emma Miller, no matter the cost. The tremor in his voice betrayed more than just anger, it was fear, because Blake had recognized something in Emma's shooting that the others had missed: the unmistakable technique of military training, executed with a precision that could not be faked. By evening, word of the confrontation had spread through Boston's elite circles. Blake Radcliffe was bombarded with messages from friends, rivals, and journalists, all asking about the mysterious woman who had dared to challenge him. In his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, Blake sipped aged scotch from a crystal tumbler, trying to calm his nerves. His girlfriend, Jessica Thompson, scrolled through her phone, frowning at the growing buzz. "They're calling her the unknown marksman," she reported, her voice tinged with concern. "Someone posted a blurry video of her last shot. It's already got thousands of views." Blake drained his glass. "One lucky day doesn't make her a marksman. By next week, everyone will know she's a fraud." Jessica looked up at him, her expression unusually serious. "Blake, honey, those weren't lucky shots. I've watched you compete for years." "She's good, really good." The sharp ring of his phone interrupted their conversation. Blake checked the caller ID and straightened when he recognized his investigator's number. "Tell me you found something," he demanded. The voice on the other end was apologetic. "Not much yet, Mr. Radcliffe." Emma Miller, 35, works as a senior accountant at Meridian Financial. Moved to Boston from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Clean record, pays her taxes, keeps to herself. No social media presence, no competitive shooting background. Blake's frustration grew. "That's impossible. Nobody shoots like that without training." "Dig deeper." After ending the call, Blake paced the length of his living room. "I don't understand. Who is she? Where did she learn to shoot like that?" Jessica sat down, watching him with growing unease. "Blake, maybe it's time to let this go. Pay the charity, chalk it up as an off day." Blake stopped abruptly, turning to her with an intensity that made her flinch. "This isn't about the money. It's about my reputation, my legacy." Across town, Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. Michael Reeves had called 3 times since she left the range. The shooting community was smaller than most people realized, especially among those with military connections. Emma brewed a cup of tea and carried it to her small balcony, the events of the day replaying in her mind. Part of her regretted accepting Blake's challenge, as she never wanted this attention. Yet, another part of her felt liberated, like something long dormant had awakened. Her phone buzzed again, displaying an unfamiliar number. After a moment of hesitation, she answered. "Miss Miller, this is Rebecca Johnson from the Elite Shooters Club." Emma tensed. "Rebecca Johnson, what can I do for you?" Rebecca's voice was urgent. "I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know Blake has people looking into your background. He's convinced you cheated somehow." Emma closed her eyes, a sigh escaping her lips. Unsurprised, but disappointed. "Thank you for the warning, Miss Johnson, but I have nothing to hide." Rebecca's voice dropped, becoming quieter. "Look, I don't know who you are or where you learned to shoot like that, but Blake Radcliffe has a lot of influence in this city. His family practically owns half of Boston. If he feels threatened, he can make things difficult for you." Emma appreciated the concern but knew better than to let threats rattle her. Years as a military spouse had taught her the difference between real danger and intimidation tactics. "I'll be careful," Emma promised. "But I intend to honor our agreement." After the call ended, Emma opened a small wooden box containing Nathan's medals, letters, and their wedding photo. Beneath the folded flag from his funeral lay Nathan's logbook, a record of his training sessions and missions. As she flipped through it, she found the pages where he had documented their practice sessions together. His handwriting was precise. "Emma, 50 yards, 9/10 bullseyes, natural talent better than most recruits. The next morning, Emma called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of heading to the office, she drove to a public range far from the elite shooter's exclusive clientele. For 8 hours, she practiced methodically, working through every technique Nathan had taught her. Each shot felt like a conversation with his memory, a promise kept across the boundary between life and death. That evening, a text message arrived from Rebecca. Blake was requesting rule changes for the competition. Now wants 10 different firearms at varying distances. Board approved. Emma understood the implications. Blake was restructuring the competition to showcase the breadth of his training and experience in areas where she might be vulnerable. Her response was simple: "Thank you for letting me know. No changes needed on my end." In his penthouse, Blake received the update with growing satisfaction. "Perfect," he said to Jessica. 10 different stations, 10 different firearms. There's no way she can match my experience across the range of weapons. Jessica set down her wine glass carefully. "And if she does?" Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "She won't. But if by some miracle she gets close, I've arranged a little insurance policy." The day before the competition, Michael Reeves finally caught up with Emma by showing up at her door unannounced. "You couldn't return a call?" he asked, his gruff tone softened by the concern in his eyes. Emma let him in, relieved to see a familiar face. "I've been busy," she said quietly. "Been busy," she explained simply. Michael surveyed the apartment, noting the shooting manuals spread across the table. "So I've heard. The whole community's talking about you and Radcliffe." They sat across from each other at Emma's kitchen table. "Nathan would be proud, you know, not just of the shooting, but of you stepping back into the world." Emma's eyes burned suddenly with unexpected tears. "I'm not sure that's what I'm doing." "This wasn't planned, Michael." He nodded, understanding. "The best battles rarely are, but sometimes they're exactly what we need." He reached across the table, his weathered hand covering hers briefly. "You're not alone in this. I've made some calls. There'll be friends in the audience tomorrow." As Michael prepared to leave, he turned back at the door. "One more thing, be careful with Radcliffe. A guy like that, with his money and connections, he's not used to losing, and he won't take it well if he does. Nathan would want you to watch your six." Emma nodded, appreciating both the warning and the military terminology. "I will." "And Michael, thank you for the pass, for everything." His smile was warm. "Just keeping a promise to a brother, that's what we do." Blake Radcliffe's investigation into Emma Miller had begun as a matter of wounded pride. By midweek, it had evolved into an obsession that consumed his attention more thoroughly than any competition preparation. The initial background check had yielded frustratingly little: no criminal record, no competitive shooting history, not even a speeding ticket. On paper, Emma Miller was exactly what she appeared to be, an unremarkable accountant living a quiet life. "I want you to focus on Virginia Beach," Blake instructed his investigator. "She lived there before Boston. Check shooting clubs, gun ranges, instructors, anyone who might remember her, and that wedding ring she keeps touching to find out about her husband." The investigator's voice remained professionally neutral despite Blake's increasingly demanding requests. "I'll look into it, Mr. Radcliffe." "I don't care what it takes," Blake interrupted sharply. "The competition is in 2 days. I need information now." After ending the call, Blake stood before the wall displaying his most prestigious award, the Olympic gold medal from 8 years earlier. The younger Blake in the photograph beamed with genuine joy, an expression that had grown increasingly rare as success accumulated and the pressure to maintain his position intensified. The breakthrough came late that evening as Blake was reviewing footage of Emma's shooting form. His phone rang, displaying his investigator's number. "Virginia Beach was the key, Mr. Radcliffe," the investigator said. "Emma Miller is the widow of Master Chief Nathan Miller, U.S. Navy SEAL, killed in action 3 years ago. Highly decorated sniper, according to my source." Blake felt a chill run through him. "A SEAL sniper, are you certain?" "Absolutely certain. Miller was known for training his wife. Military buddies called it a hobby, but he took it seriously. One contact remembered him saying she was a natural with exceptional potential." "Is there anything else?" Blake asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Just one thing. the investigator replied. Miller had a nickname and the team said they called him the Ghost for his ability to hit targets no one else could see. He held several unofficial long-distance records within the special operations community. Blake ended the call, sitting motionless as the implications settled over him. Emma Miller wasn't just lucky, and she wasn't a fraud. She was the copyright copyrightee of a legendary military sniper. The narrative Blake had constructed of exposing an amateur's lucky streak was collapsing. Worse, the alternative narrative forming in its place was far more compelling. The widow of a fallen hero honoring his memory through the skills he had taught her, challenging the privileged champion who had mocked her. Across town, Emma was unaware of Blake's discovery as she focused on her own preparations. On Thursday evening, she received another call from Rebecca Johnson. "Miss Miller, I wanted to update you on the competition details for Saturday. There's been another change. Blake has requested, and the board has approved, a modification to the scoring system. Each station will now be weighted based on difficulty, with the final station counting for 30% of the total score." Emma absorbed this information, recognizing the strategic manipulation. "Let me guess, the final station involves a firearm that Blake particularly excels with." Rebecca's hesitation confirmed Emma's suspicion. "It's a custom Macmillan TAC 338, a long-range precision rifle that Blake has exclusive experience with. It's one of only 5 in civilian hands in the Northeast." Blake's light crossed her eyes, calculating the implications. She had extensive handgun training from Nathan but significantly less experience with specialized long-range rifles. After the call, Emma sat at her kitchen table, contemplating this development. If Blake was investigating her military connections, it was only a matter of time before he discovered Nathan's identity. The next morning, Emma drove to a specialized range outside the city where she had arranged private access to practice with long-range rifles. As she pulled into the parking lot, she noticed a black SUV with government plates. Leaning against it was a tall man with the unmistakable bearing of special operations personnel. "Mrs. Miller, Commander Wilson, former Team 3. I served with Nathan in Baghdad in '16. Emma had met many of Nathan's colleagues over the years, though this man wasn't familiar. "Commander, I don't recall Nathan mentioning you." The man's expression remained neutral. "We weren't in the same squad, ma'am, but in the teams. We all know the Ghost's reputation." He gestured toward the range. "Heard you might appreciate some pointers on the Macmillan TAC 338. I have some experience with that platform." For the next 4 hours, Commander Wilson guided Emma through the intricacies of the high-precision rifle. "Nathan taught you well with handguns," he observed as she completed a series of increasingly accurate shots. "You have his patience and breathing control. This isn't so different, just magnified. Trust what you know." By early afternoon, Emma was consistently hitting targets at distances that would have seemed impossible days earlier. As they packed up, Wilson handed her a small notebook. Nathan's distance calculations and wind adjustment formulas. He developed them himself. Might come in handy tomorrow. Emma accepted the notebook with reverence. "Thank you, Commander, but why are you helping me? You don't know me." Wilson's expression softened slightly. "When you lose a brother in the teams, you look after what mattered to him. Nathan talked about you, how proud he was of your progress. Your natural ability. Said you had the calmest hands he'd ever seen on a civilian." As Wilson departed, Emma realized that her private challenge had expanded into something larger, a representation of values that extended beyond the immediate competition. It had become a symbolic confrontation between different worlds, the privilege that Blake embodied versus the quiet excellence that Nathan had represented. Flamboyant wealth against understated service. In his penthouse that evening, Blake received the final confirmation of Emma's connection to the legendary SEAL sniper. With each new detail in Nathan Miller's service record, his reputation within the Special Forces community, the circumstances of his death during a classified mission, Blake's confidence eroded further. He poured himself another drink, dismissing Jessica's concerned glance. "It doesn't change anything," he insisted. "Experience wins over sentiment every time." Jessica watched him with increasing unease. "Blake, maybe it's time to reconsider. Pay the charity, cancel the competition. This is becoming complicated." Blake slammed his glass down, Cancel and confirm every whisper that I'm afraid of her. Number. Tomorrow happens exactly as planned. He reached for his phone, dialing a number from memory. It's Blake. Is everything arranged for tomorrow? The conversation that followed was brief. After ending the call, he turned to find Jessica watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. What was that about? She asked quietly. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just ensuring a level playing field, my dear, nothing more. The Elite Shooters Club buzzed with unprecedented activity on competition day. The club's board had opened the event to the public, transforming a private duel into a premium press spectacle. Inside, Rebecca Johnson supervised final preparations, noting subtle inconsistencies in the equipment at several stations, adjustments positioned to disadvantage anyone unfamiliar with their unique characteristics. Emma arrived, dressed simply in jeans and a navy button-down, carrying only a small duffel bag containing Nathan's notebook. Rebecca met her privately, voice lowered. I've completed the equipment check. There are irregularities. Nothing I can officially flag, but enough to advantage someone with intimate knowledge of these specific firearms. Emma nodded. Thank you for letting me know. Blake arrived, surrounded by sponsors and entourage, dressed in logo-emblazoned gear. Approaching Emma, his smile failed to reach his eyes. Miss Miller, I trust you slept well? The subtle emphasis on her name implied he had discovered her connection to Nathan. I should warn you, Blake continued, the pressure can be overwhelming for those unaccustomed to the spotlight. No shame in withdrawing. Emma met his gaze steadily. I'll manage, Mr. Radcliffe. My husband taught me about performing under pressure. The competition area resembled a stadium with digital displays showing scores and 3 certified range masters officiating. As Emma prepared for the first station, she noticed a group of men with unmistakable military bearing seated in the back row, and Michael Reeves among them. His subtle nod bolstered her resolve. Through the first stations, Blake's technique showed years of competition experience, flawless and precise. Emma's approach was different, quieter, more economical, with a stillness between shots that spoke of intensive training. By the 4th station, Blake held a slight lead, thanks to his. At the 5th station, during the competition, Emma noticed an issue with her equipment. The trigger pull on the Sig Sauer felt subtly heavier than standard. Recalling Nathan's words, equipment fails, conditions change, adapt and overcome, she adjusted her stance and managed to match Blake's score despite the handicap. As the competition progressed, a pattern emerged. Blake excelled with competition-style firearms, while Emma showcased remarkable consistency across all platforms, particularly military-grade weapons. By the 8th station, Blake's lead had narrowed to a statistically insignificant margin, and the crowd, growing increasingly vocal in support of Emma, seemed captivated by her quiet competence, especially in contrast to Blake's showmanship. Before the 9th station, Blake approached Emma. Impressive performance, Mrs. Miller. Your husband would be proud. The Ghost's techniques are distinctive. Emma's hands stilled for a moment at the deliberate use of Nathan's call sign, but her expression remained controlled. Then you know he valued integrity above all else, Mr. Radcliffe, she replied. When the 9th station concluded, the scores were tied, with the competition set to be decided entirely by the final, most challenging station, the Macmillan TAC-38 at an exceptional distance. Emma immediately noticed subtle adjustments to the scope and stock. Rather than protesting, she consulted Nathan's notebook, finding his formulas for compensating for equipment variations. Blake completed his sequence first, placing 9 out of 10 shots within the innermost rings, setting a benchmark that required near perfection for Emma to overcome. Not everyone is built for championship pressure, Blake remarked, loud enough for nearby spectators to hear. Taking position behind the rifle, Emma felt a strange calmness descend to the same focused state Nathan had described from his missions. She made adjustments based on his formulas, compensating for the subtle sabotage using techniques honed through combat experience. Her first shots hit with perfect precision. By the 6th shot, all were bullseyes. The crowd leaned forward in collective anticipation as she prepared for her final shot. A sharp reflection of light flashed across her sightline, a momentary distraction from someone near Blake's entourage. Emma paused, then refocused with absolute control, sending the final round downrange with unwavering precision, a 10th consecutive bullseye that surpassed Blake's performance. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause, transforming into a standing ovation. The final results were clear. Emma Miller took first place, and Blake Radcliffe came second. Blake's sportsmanship mask slipped, revealing raw fury as he offered a perfunctory handshake. "This isn't over," he whispered. Emma responded calmly, "For today, it is, and I believe you owe $50,000 to the Veteran Support Foundation." Blake's Section 8 crumbled completely. "You think this proves anything? That a military widow with beginner's luck can replace years of championship experience? This was nothing but a publicity stunt." His voice carried throughout the now silent room. "The equipment was rigged," he continued. "Indeed, Mr. Radcliffe," Rebecca interjected, holding up her tablet displaying security footage of Blake's technical advisor tampering with the competition firearms. "But not in Miss Miller's favor. The club's security system records all access to the equipment room." The revelation sent shock through the audience, transforming admiration for Emma's performance into deeper respect for her excellence, achieved despite deliberate sabotage. Blake stood frozen, registering not only the loss of the competition but also the potential destruction of his reputation and career. By Sunday morning, video clips of Emma's perfect final sequence and Blake's meltdown had spread across media platforms, turning a niche sporting story into a broader narrative about privilege and redemption. Emma woke to dozens of messages from journalists and sponsors but responded to none. Instead, she made a single call to Michael Reeves. "It's gotten bigger than I expected. What do I do now?" "That depends on what you want," Michael replied. "Privacy or justice?" Emma considered briefly. "Blake hasn't paid the donation, and the equipment tampering was fraud. There should be consequences." At the Radcliffe penthouse, Blake's crisis team strategized damage control. "We issue a statement citing extreme pressure, acknowledge a lapse in judgment, announce a donation to veterans' causes, and check into a wellness center," his publicist suggested. Blake refused. "I'm not apologizing. That woman had military training. That's the real unfair advantage." Their session was interrupted by Boston police officers. "Blake Radcliffe, we need you to answer questions regarding allegations of fraud and criminal tampering. We're investigating violations of Massachusetts gaming laws, since the event involved a substantial wager." Meanwhile, Emma met with the Veterans Support Foundation's director, retired Marine Colonel James Harrison. "Several of our board members are also members of the Elite Shooters Club. They've initiated proceedings to revoke Mr. Radcliffe's championship records." Harrison then presented Emma with an unexpected proposal. "Our foundation has been developing a marksmanship training program for veterans struggling with reintegration. The therapeutic aspects of shooting sports have shown promising results. We would be honored if you would consider taking a role in this initiative." 3 days later, Emma reviewed the settlement offer from Blake's legal team, a $100,000 donation to the foundation, double the original amount, a public apology, and a request for a private meeting before any statements were made. That meeting took place in a neutral conference room. Blake entered with his attorney, his usual swagger diminished. His designer attire was replaced by a conservative business suit. "Mrs. Miller, I want to apologize for my conduct. The truth is, I've built my entire identity around being the best. When you threatened that, I reacted poorly, criminally." His rehearsed statement gave way to something more genuine. "I've never faced someone who shoots for reasons beyond trophies or recognition. It was unsettling." Emma considered his words. "Mr. Radcliffe, I didn't enter that competition seeking to unsettle anyone. I was keeping a promise to my husband. Your actions undermined the integrity of a sport you claimed to respect and dishonored the charity you agreed to support." Blake nodded, genuine shame crossing his features. "That's why I've increased the donation and accepted the 3-year suspension from competition." The settlement was signed. As they prepared to leave, Blake extended his hand. "For what it's worth, you're the finest shooter I've ever competed against. Your husband taught you well." Emma accepted the handshake briefly. "He would say I was already a good student." Sometimes the right teacher just helps us discover what's already there. 2 weeks later, Emma stood in the newly established training range at the Veterans Support Foundation's Rehabilitation Center, funded by Blake's donation and contributions from manufacturers. Her first class consisted of 6 veterans, carrying visible and invisible wounds from their service. "Good morning," she began, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "My name is Emma Miller. I'm not a soldier or a champion, just someone who learned that sometimes the steadiest hands belong to those who have endured the greatest shaking. Today, we begin with fundamentals: how to stand, how to breathe, how to focus." 6 months later, at the Foundation's fundraiser, Emma addressed the gathering. "1 year ago, I walked into a shooting range for the first time in 3 years, keeping a promise to my late husband. I expected to reconnect with a skill he taught me, then return to my quiet life. Instead, I found myself in a confrontation that led to this program and the community we're building together." When the Foundation announced the annual Nathan Ghost Miller Excellence in Marksmanship Scholarship for veterans pursuing careers in shooting instruction, Emma felt tears form. The first recipient, a former Army Ranger who had overcome significant injuries, accepted the honor. Emma twisted her wedding ring one final time. "This one's for you, Nathan, for everything you taught me about standing my ground." Perhaps Emma's greatest victory wasn't defeating a champion who had underestimated her, but finding her way back to the world, rebuilding a life that honored both past and future. For those watching her journey from being ignored at the Elite Shooters Club to confidently leading the Foundation's programs, the lesson was clear: never underestimate the quiet ones. Behind their silence might lie determination forged through adversity, skills honed through dedication, and values anchored in experiences beyond understanding. And if you find yourself dismissed or overlooked, remember Emma Miller's journey: how a woman once ignored at a shooting range transformed a moment of disrespect into a movement of respect, one perfect shot at a time.